So then, we are back with the more understandings from the Renewed Covenant, from the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of Israel, from the prophets of Yahweh, giving us then the understanding of the time of the end. And truly these writings are related with the Second Tabernacle Services writings. So then we can understand what it means, transitional time from the first and the second services. And then people are more acquainted with these in order to understand in the time of the end, as the time is very short. We understand from 2031 would be then the maximum time that was given then to the Gentiles because of the time of the Messiah he spent with the Samaritans while he was completing then the spring feast. And the spring feast we find then in Leviticus, found in the Torah. So then from Bereshit to Devarim you understand what it means of then the study of the Torah. The instructions, those are the basics. You can't expect of being in university without having the ABCs basics when you were then during the time of your infancy, your basic studies. So the same way you don't understand the scripture and the prophets and the writings if you don't understand it then the Torah. The Torah is absolutely important. So then we find ourselves during the time of Yisrael, the 61st chapter, where then the prophet of Yahweh spoke. Not me, you, or anybody else. It was the prophet of Yahweh, giving us then the understanding of the time of the end, regarding then the returning of the holy cities, because the whole reference of the renewed covenant, the focus, the understanding, the reference point, the entire situation is related with the holy city coming from heaven. So when people they have this bad conception of then going to heaven, that's exactly the contrary of what Satan then taught. Satan taught that the people that are going to heaven, he then concocted this because he knew that the city then comes from heaven. So then, rather than continuing the teachings of the holy cities after 1009, he had to scoundrelize the whole understanding. So then, people were receiving understandings and directives how to become saved, and then afterwards going to rest, and then coming up after this age then is completed. Then he is scandalized. Rather than the heavens then yielding the holy city, the prime understanding of the scripture, then you find Nahashtan deceiving the people that they would go to heaven rather than having come into the earth. So then the entire teaching of the church is an absolute lie, and they should be taught otherwise. Because the reason why the cities are returning is because the world is in a point where then they must have directives from the holy city as it was from the time of Yohanan until 1009. That's the reason why we must study then the Torah and the prophets and the writings and then understand where we are at. Because this war going on over there in Israel with other nations won't stop until the holy city is put together. It's the nature of the understanding of the prophecy related with the holy city for the advantage of the Gentiles, giving them directives. The longer it takes to get the city done, the worse it gets. So rather than the prophecies of Israel being for Israel became against them until the holy city then is constructed and closed per instructions. So there is no way out of it. They can try as much as they can. They can have other nations coming and helping them, but they're going to find themselves more and more at war, more conflicts, and be sure of it, because from the scripture and what we understand from then Shimon and what he said regarding discipline, you can be absolutely sure of it. The Arab League is going to have their way. They can come together and do whatsoever they think is required to get the situation resolved, and they have the favor. Because as we read then Yeshayahu, the chapter 1:8, we find in the land of Cush the very place where the holy city is going to be at, giving us, indicating, tabernacling amongst the fears, the city from many cities. Because the whole concept of the renewed covenant, or then the second tabernacle services writings, is the focus of the holy city. Read in Hebrews the 11th chapter. Always making a reference of the city to come from the cities already established. So Shaliach Shaul, then he starts the entire understanding first, obviously, focusing the people in having the city yet to come from heaven after the autumn feast. Then he explains then the area of then the tabernacle in the desert. Then he explains the second tabernacle services, where you find many cities. The city of God, the city of Yahweh, then giving directives to the nations, being priests and kings. However, understand this factor: kings related of the kingdom to come government's teachings. It does not refer of the set-apart people being kings in this condemned world. Does not make any sense. Because the Messiah himself, they tried to make him king and he fled. So then the understanding of the Messiah, the very focus of the Holy of Holies, he fled. He does not want the kingdom of this earth, but then the kingdom to come. So then his people would understand they would be priests of Yahweh and then kings related of the kingdom to come. So in fact the cities, they don't mix with the world system. They simply give them directives. This is the way it was, and it's simply returning. So for those not acquainted with the scripture, then they were born during the time of the deceit, they have truly a hard time understanding, because their minds are seared. Shaliach Shaul already said at the end their minds would be seared so badly as with hot iron, where they can't understand sound doctrine. Of course, they were born during the time of deceit. Where do you find a Messiah outside of the Holy Tabernacles? It's insanity. Always from Hebraic scripture you find tabernacle, temple. It is specific geographical area where you find either a tent or a building where deity of the Most High then inhabits. Thus tabernacle. Now you have then during the time of the second tabernacle services, then you find a Messiah outside of the Holy of Holies. It's absolutely insanity. It was the invention of Nehashtan after 1009. That's why you have most of churches coming from this time. It was deceit. Time of deceit has ended in 08, 09, and then we are returning to the truth. So then when you read Yeshayahu, the 61st chapters, the city is laid waste for many centuries. Those are returning, and the first place is then Cush. The land of Cush, tabernacling amongst the fierce. The reason why it's there, because there is no lie. If you lie over there, you lost your life. And then, obviously, the Messiah was pointing then the people to the cities, as he was then engaged in teaching his people the second tabernacle services. Rather than having a city of Yahweh, would be many cities around the world, then rescuing the Gentiles from this perverse and condemned world. So when you read in Yohanan, because God so loved the world and gave his Son, it's the wrong concept. He came to tabernacle among his people, and his people would direct then the Gentiles. That's the entire plan. The way it was put together was very neat, because Yahweh himself taught his people when they left Egypt with mighty signs and wonders. They went through the water, and then they were parted near the mountain. Obviously Moshe went up to the mountain, he received the holy laws and established the first city. So then you understand what it means, the first city, then later became the second city. Then plural rather than singular. 1,000 years has gone by, it's time of deceit, church is junk. Never neglecting the idea of having charity. Charity is very important. If they want to go around the world and do charity work, it's fine. But don't label as a divine people trying to be of God's people. Doesn't exist. It was made it up. So the best for them is understand the holy city, what it means, the returning of the holy city, and then many cities after, as it was during the time of Yohanan. People have to cope with the idea they were deceived. Churches do not exist. The entire religious system of church is a fraud. It was made up by Nehashtan himself, and then people are not going to heaven. Either they are going to rest in the Messiah, or they are going to Sheol or Inferno, or then torment until this earth then is eliminated with a shot of sulfur. The Messiah already spoke the way it's going to be. You can find this in Luke. As during the time of Noah, then people were giving the relationships and building a barn, or then building a house, or having another family member, and so on and so forth. And then as it was during the time of Lot, they were giving each other relationships and having families and doing the mundane, and then the time came and they were destroyed. So after many centuries, Gentiles doing whatever they want in the name of a deity, at the end of this time is gone. The city is returning, and the holy cities are going to be giving directives as it was during the time of Yohanan. It must return because it's part of the plan. And then when you read in Revelation, the altars, it's plural. The translators did not know what they were doing. Part of it they did, part of it they did on purpose. The more they tried to lie and scandalize, the more they did not understand, the more junk they wrote. So then after the first city comes the second city, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, around the world as the Messiah told them to do. So then we know what to expect from then the holy city, and more than we should ever expect would be obviously Israel giving directives as far as Torah is concerned. But so far we find them very confused. They don't understand what it means, the prophetic understandings of the Torah, the shadow prophetic understandings of the future, and then they are always confused. But as long as they understand this time they are cornered, they can get out of it. Any nation trying to help Israel, they are going to be then set aside because the time is for the city to return, and then praying for Jerusalem. This is the entire plan of the holy writings then recorded in the Torah, the holy city. Because our nation, there are even in our own, some of our states, they don't even let people do Christmas anymore. Because it's a pagan holiday. It's pagan. So they're trying to make you holy what is pagan, and do you think the other countries don't sense it's a pure lie? It's junk. The Messiah was born in mid-Tishri, first day of the Feast of Tabernacles, or then Sukkah, of 4999. That's when he was born. Because of the great star of Bethlehem was recorded, and the computer was able to find via the eclipses and then the times and seasons. So people have to come to the conclusion, churches are a fraud. Then they should be, in fact, if they are not 100% charitable organizations, they should be taxed. The only way they can get away from not being taxed is then by being charitable organizations. If they decide to be religious organizations, they should be taxed because they are not. They are a fraud. It was an invented religion. So then, understanding the concept that there is a Messiah, there is a Creator, we find ourselves during the time of restoration, and we must restore. After 08, at the end of the covenant of death, then the rulership of Nahashtan of 1,000 years since 1009 then had ended. The very factor after then we enter the time of restoration and reduction. Restoration of the holy cities as per the prophets' descriptive understandings of it, and the reduction of time from 2031. Because the Messiah spent 2 days with the Samaritans, and then the time is being reduced, as it's stated in Matthew 24th chapter. And these oracles, these prophecies should be explained by the set apart. But so far, boy, Israel is very confused. Somebody has to go over there and teach them. Because this time, the Arab League, they have their way. And if the Holy Seat does not return, then the dreadful understanding of being leveled is going to be upon Israel. Thus you understand the time of discipline is spoken of by Shaliach Shimon. Read the scripture. Try to understand the times and seasons and what then the Shilishim were making a reference. The holy city to come. Preparing the people then for the autumn feast. If they are prepared for the autumn feast, they can get through the autumn feast. Vengeance then is served, and then justice then is completed, and then the new earth comes, and then the holy city comes from heaven, and then this planet becomes then a decent place to live in. Now let me ask you this. When you go to those establishments, then you find these crazy denominations. They don't understand what they're speaking. Yet 1,000 years to come. Is it before the tribulation? After tribulation? What tribulation? What kind of a tribulation? The whole concept is a piece of junk. They can even explain themselves. Imagine how many people are on being pastors, teachers, and evangelists. They are receiving salaries based upon a lie. It doesn't exist. How long is it going to take for our country to clean itself from junk? Centuries. Decades of junk, teaching junk. There is no Messiah outside of the Holy Tabernacles. There is no gifting of any kind of a spirit. So then Shimon, in 4th chapter, he was explaining then what Elohim had meant for his people to do, and obviously they refused. And then Israel, at the moment, they are being disciplined. And they understand. The Arab League, they have the forward motion. This time it's theirs. There is no retrieving from this prophetic time motion that we are at this very moment experiencing as you watch television. And don't think you can change the Creator's mind, because you can't. And destroying the prophet as Yeshayahu was sawn in half because he was hated so badly, the nation wanted him to lie. This is what Israel wanted Yirmiyahu to do, to take away his words and then lie. And he did not. He did not back away from it. He was murdered. So Israel at the moment, they are living in a situation where they have technology that can intercept rockets in the air. They are living as if you would compare with the previous service, or then during the first service, and you find then Israel building then cisterns. They want to be themselves. They want to be people that they are reliable on themselves. And if you ask them, where are we at in the Torah regarding then the prophecies of the end, they don't have an answer. Please stay tuned, much more coming up.